There is one thing about Elden Ring that I always thought is not talked about enough, and that is the Tarnished, the main characters themselves. Now, don't get me wrong, I know that there are videos and blog posts and a lot of theories talking about the Tarnished, but I still get the feeling that compared to other FromSoft games, compared to Dark Souls, to Sekiro or to Bloodborne, not only do we have less concrete facts about the nature of the main characters, but also many players just assume certain things are as they were in the predecessor games. Just think about how many people, including myself, still refer to the sites of grace as bonfires. FromSoft games do have a common mood, a common style, so I'm actually not surprised that it's really easy to think, yeah, of course I am an undead who gets revived every time I die. I mean, that's how it has always been, right? But Elden Ring actually, while still leaning on that concept obviously, has a really interesting and well thought of take on this framework. And I kind of want to take a closer look and find out what actually are the Tarnished. So if this sounds interesting to you, press the like button under this video and subscribe to my channel if you want to stay up to date with any future videos that I make. And well, let's get into it.
Foul Tarnished. In search of the Elden Ring. Emboldened by the flame of ambition. Someone must extinguish thy flame.
The Tarnished are the warriors of Godfrey, the first Elden Lord and consort of Queen Marika. Godfrey fought various wars for Marika around the start of her age, but at some point he lost the grace in his eyes, and Marika banished him and his retainers from the lands between. Now, you could argue if he lost the grace in his eyes because Marika banished him, or if she banished him because he lost the grace in his eyes, but the fact is he and his forces were of no use to Marika anymore at this specific point. The exact words from Marika, as recited by Melina, were,
"In Marika's own words, my lord, and thy warriors, I divest each of thee of thy grace. With thine eyes dimmed, ye will be driven from the lands between. Ye will wage war in a land afar, where ye will live and die. Then, after thy death, I will give back what I once claimed, return to the lands between, wage war, and brandish the Elden Ring, grow strong in the face of death. Warriors of my lord, Lord Godfrey."
The most obvious interpretation is of course that Marika took their grace, banished them, but promised that they will return at some point. But I am not sure if that was necessarily intentional. A big topic in Elden Ring is disenchantment. We get those ideas in Marika's story, and also in what we know of Miquella, who was disenchanted by the ideals of the Golden Order, which ended up being not as perfect as it seemed at first glance. Even the Tarnished are said to be called primarily since the demigods warring for the pieces of the Elden Ring were not deemed fit for lordship by the Greater Will, which is very similar to why the Ashen Ones were raised in Dark Souls 3, where originally the old lords who already linked the Fire Ones were actually supposed to fix the world. So who knows, maybe when Godfrey lost his grace, he literally lost his faith in Marika and her order, her system, because of everything he has seen and done, which made him and his forces too much of a wild card for Marika to keep around. However, it also shows that even if Marika not intentionally took Godfrey's grace, she had some idea of what will happen in the future, or maybe even a plan. The exile of Godfrey and the Tarnished was called the Long March, which is also usually interpreted very literally. They physically left the lands between to fight a different war. This has a few implications. As in Marika's Golden Order, there was not really any death. As she took the Rune of Death out of the Elden Ring, this would mean that whatever exactly the Golden Order is, there must be a place, a physical place, this order does not apply to. The biggest reason to support this theory is the rusted anchor item, which describes that when the Tarnished left the lands between, one boat was left, which obviously does suggest the Tarnished left via water. There is, however, one thing that confuses me a bit, and that would be the time spans. In the lands between, under Marika's Golden Order, there is no death. People don't die, their souls return to the Erdtree, where you eventually get reborn. But this seems to be different for some entities. Marika and the demigods do not seem to be victim to a rebirth cycle. They could be, but we have no real lead suggesting this. At least they do not seem to have a natural lifespan after which they return to the Erdtree. Miyazaki confirmed in an interview that at least the demigods were immortals, and the death of Godwyn the Golden was supposed to be the first recorded death of a demigod. But once again, it seems like regular death within the Age of the Erdtree was never called death, and whenever people talk about death, they usually talk about destined death. This could just be how life in the lands between works in general. You just don't die of something like old age, but if you should die from external reasons, war or sickness, grace returns you to the Erdtree. But how does this affect the Tarnished after their banishment? They have no grace left, so do they and Godfrey still have an extended lifespan? Or did they war and die comparably quickly? One thing that is clear is that they all did die. Whatever that means for them. I don't think it is true death, destined death, mostly because I do not think that this is something that Grace, the Erdtree, the Golden Order, or the Greater Will can bring one back from. And as we know, Godfrey and most of the Tarnished come back. So Tarnished are basically undead. Kind of. The images at the very beginning of the game show a vast catacomb area filled with bodies that are most likely tarnished. When Marika broke the Elden Ring and her children kept on warring instead of taking her place, the Greater Will, or the Fingers in their stead, turned to the Tarnished, returned their grace and therefore their life, in order to use them to fix the Elden Ring, offering them the seed of Elden Lord in return. The Tarnished can see the grace again and let it guide them towards their goals. At least some of them. The way I always thought about it is, and this is just speculation, that when Marika talks about sending Godfrey and the Tarnished to another land, this is just a more colorful way to say that she kind of killed them. Another land not being a physical place in the world, but a land of the dead. If someone would be able to stop or disable the rebirth cycle of the Erdtree, then it would probably be Marika. Still, she kept the Tarnished almost like in cold storage, however, which is what I think the aforementioned image shows. The main reason I do not think that the Tarnished never actually physically left the lands between is that we never see our journey back. We just wake up in a graveyard, in catacombs. I think the journey back is more of a metaphorical journey, because I somehow do not think that if all of the Tarnished actually went to another land and died there, that anyone would have gone through the pains of bringing them back to the lands between. It doesn't really make sense to me. Another thing that is kind of important for the Tarnished is of course Roundtable Hold, the place where the Tarnished gather, and where you can meet characters like Gideon, Dung-Eater, Fia, and so on. You get transported there by Melina after you have proven yourself to her, but it is actually inclined that this is usually the Finger Maiden's job to guide a Tarnished toward this meeting place. This is a place where we encounter the two fingers, the last one we can find that is still alive, at least. And truth be told, they don't really look like they are in their prime. You could argue that this is a hint to the power of the Greater Will getting weaker after the shattering of the Elden Ring, which is probably why they try to establish a new Elden Lord. But the most fascinating part of this place is that while it is not really anywhere on the physical map of the lands between, it is tucked away somewhere in the bottom left corner, literally on the compass. We do have almost a one-to-one copy of the place inside the fortified manor in Leyndell, the capital of Marika's Golden Order, underneath the Erdtree. Only that this Roundtable Hold seems to be long abandoned. One might speculate that this is actually the original Roundtable, from when Godfrey and his kin still actively served Marika. But what does this mean for the one we actually return to all the time during our gameplay? Is this just an imagination? I don't really think so. It seems quite real. You can interact with people and things, and even get killed. So I kind of still think that it is an actual place and actually placed in the lands between. More exactly, I think that the roundtable hold is actually inside the Erdtree itself. Let me explain. There are a few hints towards this. First of all, the large grace in the middle of the table, which is by far the largest concentration of grace that can be found anywhere in game. It kind of makes sense that this would be found at the place that represents the power of the Golden Order itself. That is kind of grown from the Elden Ring, or has at least very strong connections to it, which is the Erdtree. If we agree to the fact that the Tarnished have been called back by the Greater Will to try and fix the Elden Ring, let's put the discussion about how far Marika was involved in this to the side for a moment, then why shouldn't they create a safe place for them within the area they still have the strongest influence over? Earlier we did mention that in Marika's Golden Order the dead don't really die, but their souls return to the Erdtree, which I would agree is not only what happens when we die in game, maybe just a bit faster than for non-Tarnished, but also when we move to Roundtable Hold. We just return to the Erdtree, but the strongest hint is obviously that the moment Melina burns the Erdtree, Roundtable Hold is also on fire. But is there actual death for Tarnished? As a matter of fact, yes, I think that there is something like actual death, even within this samsara wheel of eternal rebirth that we are subject to. Obviously, we have destined death that seems to be a power that can actually kill anything in some way or the other, but also there is something kinda similar to hollowing from Dark Souls. You remember that in Dark Souls, the hollow were the undead that have died so many times that they have basically gone mad. They lost their drive and their sanity. And I think in Elden Ring something similar happens when you lose your faith. We know that not all the Tarnished can see the sides of grace. Both Rogier and Boggart state in their dialogue that they have lost the ability to see the grace. And I think that is an important point to make. The way they talk is not like they were never able to see the grace at all. They used to, but then they gradually lost this ability. And as most of you know by now, both of their stories don't end that well. Like usual, a lot of this is just speculation, but it fits very well with the general theme of FromSoft games, where the game mechanics, especially for the so important repetitive nature of their gameplay loops, is always closely tied to the lore and the narrative. Of course, they often leave things quite vague on purpose, so that we have the chance to ask ourselves questions like the ones we did in this video, but we will also very soon get a new DLC that seems to, among others, focus on the history of the Erdtree and its shadow. And who knows, maybe we will get some more information on what actually happened soon. I'm sure looking forward to it, and I hope you do too. So I hope you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you soon in the next video. Bye bye.